Regardless of what you think about Donald Trump, it doesn't matter where you are on the political spectrum or whatever you want to call it, one thing's pretty undeniable, and that's that he's interesting. And to me, I think that there's something that we can all learn from Donald Trump. Within politics, there are both written and unwritten rules. They define the boundaries of normal behaviour. Professionally, we all know what that means. Even kids at school understand that there are behaviours that fit inside the confines of a school, and there are behaviours that don't. And these conventions are fantastic because it allows a degree of certainty that we need really to be able to move into a space. We need to kind of understand how people are going to behave, how they're allowed to behave, how they're not allowed to behave, in order for us to modulate our own behaviour. To do this, we create our professional persona, our work persona. We all know you're not the same person down the pub as you are in the office. So first I want to play a clip from Carl Jung in an interview, and he's discussing persona and particularly that conflict that we have in constructing our persona. Anyway, I'll play the clip.
I wonder if you would mind telling us a little bit about how you construe this term persona.
Well, this is a practical concept we need in elucidating people's relation. I noticed with my patients, particularly with people that are in public life, that they have a certain way of presenting themselves. For instance, take the doctor. He has a certain way. For instance, he has good bedside manners, and he behaves as one expects a doctor behaves. He may even identify himself with it and believe that he is what he appears to be.
Yes.
He must appear in a certain form, unless people don't believe that he is a doctor. And so when he's a professor, he's also supposed to behave in a certain way so that it is plausible that he is a professor, you know. So the persona is partially the result of the demands society has. And on the other side, it is a compromise with what one likes to be, or with what, or as one likes to appear. Say. Now, this is not the real personality, in spite of the fact that people will assure you that that is all quite real and quite honest. Yet it is not.
Yes.
Now, such a performance, or say, the performance of the persona is quite all right, as long as you know that you are not identical with the way in which you appear.
Yes.
Now, hopefully you can kind of see where I'm going with this. So what I want to do is bring in some NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming. This is a school of thought, of psychology that's been around for quite some time, and it's pretty prevalent now in public culture, public spheres such as self-help, sales. You'll hear people like Tony Robbins were students of this school of thought, and key in the founding of it were Richard Bandler and John Grinder. So back in my early 20s, I picked up a couple of books, Transformations and Frogs into Princes. Now, these were a little bit hard to get hold of, and they're quite funky looking covers. But I want to read an extract because I think it's quite pertinent to thinking about this problem set. So they came from a computing background, and they brought a lot of that technical mindset to finding what was effective. They weren't as worried about the theory, they just wanted to find the mechanisms that got results. Anyway, in cybernetics, there is a law called the law of requisite variety, and it says that in any system of human beings or machines, the element in that system with the widest range of variability will be the controlling element. And if you restrict your behaviour, you will lose on requisite variety. The prime examples of this are mental hospitals. I don't know about your mental hospitals here, but in California, we've got some real wackos in ours. And we have a lot of patients too. It's easy to distinguish the staff because the staff has a professional ethic. They have a group hallucination, and this group hallucination is more dangerous to them than to anyone else. Now, they use the term group hallucination quite a lot, and it's pretty much similar to what we've just been saying about that sort of public sense of how to behave. So those ways make them act consistently, and the patients don't have to play by those rules. The widest range of flexibility is going to allow you to elicit responses and control the situation. Who's going to be able to elicit the most responses? The psychiatrist who's acting normal, or the patient who's acting weird? I'd like to give you one of my favorite examples. We were walking down a corridor in Napa State Mental Hospital, California, with a group of resident psychiatrists. We approached a large day room and we were talking in normal tones. As we reach the door and open it and walk in, all the psychiatrists begin to whisper. So we began to whisper too. Then finally, we looked at each other and we said, "Why are we whispering?" And one of the psychiatrists turned round and whispered, "Oh, there's a catatonic in this room and we don't want to disturb him." Now, when the catatonic can have requisite variety over a professional, then I join the catatonics. When you go to California, most therapists have a different professional ethic. For example, in order to be a good communicator, you must dress like a farm worker. That's the first rule. The second rule is that you must hug everyone too hard. Those people are always laughing at psychiatrists because they have to wear ties, but to me their behaviour is just as restricted and one-dimensional and limited. The trouble with many professional ethical codes, whether they're humanistic, analytic, or anything else, is that they limit your behaviour, and whenever you accept any "I won't do it," there are people who you're not going to be able to work with. We went into the same ward at Napa. I walked over and stomped on the catatonic's foot as hard as I could, and I got an immediate response. He came right out of catatonia, jumped up and said, "Don't do that." Now, stamping on a catatonic's foot might seem extreme, but there's a truth out of those two extracts, the video and the NLP, that I think rings through, and is something worth considering when looking at our professionals and when looking at our politicians. And I think more so than ever, this holds true in the modern world, because previously we would have been able, as public figures, to construct some sort of thin veil of persona. We knew when the cameras were rolling and we prepared for it. But now that's no longer an option. So the politicians today have to play a different game in which data points as to who they are and what sort of character they have are constantly scattered throughout. And as a result, those that are willing to constantly break character, break rules, are able to maneuver in ways. Now, there are other consequences. This isn't the be-all and end-all, but ultimately that requisite variety can give some an edge. And if you look at Donald Trump or you look at Boris Johnson, these are people who've been notoriously hard to pin down because they won't stay in one place. They're not fixed to a certain set of behaviors. And in the case of Boris Johnson, his behavior set allows for mistakes, which is wise, even if not deliberate. So I suggest that going forward, perhaps less narrow public personas are necessary, because otherwise politicians and public figures end up becoming trapped in a very narrow set of behaviours. Now, perhaps it's too late for the old guard, or not. But for the new guard, there may be a need to expand the limits. And I believe this is going to help them build trust in institutions and allow them to be more effective. they're going to need to build this requisite variety, but they're also with it in tandem going to need to build a depth of character and consistency of character that allows this requisite variety to seem truthful. I hope you found that interesting, and if there's anything you'd like to call into question, I'd love to hear it. It's just a theory, but if not, until next time.